Hello, I'm Debra Sofia Magdalene, and this is my Mastery Path Connection show. And today I'm really delighted to introduce you to Ben Turale, who is an alchemist.
Hi, everybody. Welcome.
Yeah, no, I met Ben in Glastonbury recently, and yesterday I had it was on Sunday, I had the pleasure of attending his alchemy workshop on making herbal tinctures and things. So he's very talented. I've attended his talk as well at the Glastonbury Pagan Moot. And one of the reasons I wanted to interview Ben and introduce you to him was his level of knowledge about alchemy. So Ben, first of all, what is an alchemist?
It's a good question, because alchemy, I suppose, is like a word that is used so much these days in the popular lexicon. It can just refer to someone who is able to transform things from one state to another. People might talk about certain chefs, they're an alchemist in the kitchen, or that particular artist is an alchemist. The word alchemy in a traditional sense really refers to the teachings that come through from a study of spirituality called hermetics. And that's a form of spirituality that has been in the West really since ancient Egypt, and before that, possibly even to ancient Mesopotamia, into Babylon. So an alchemist, I suppose, is somebody who they might use alchemical principles or hermetic principles in order to transform their own life or help someone else transform their lives. And I suppose the important thing is that hermetic teachings can be applied on any level. So that means that whether you're looking at an individual or perhaps a relationship or an organization, you can apply hermetic principles on all those levels, on a planetary level as well. Mm-hmm. Because hermetics is attempting to look at key principles that the whole universe uses in order to transform from one state to another, or from one level of being to another. So an alchemist is really someone, I think it's someone who uses those principles or those teachings, is familiar with those teachings. I would almost say that a key part of being an alchemist too is that you're aware of the fact that your consciousness plays an active role in transformation and in your life. So purposefully using intention and awareness in what you're doing, because in alchemy we believe that this has a somewhat magical effect on your life. To be in possession of the right mindset. Mind is connected intimately to matter. So the more that you use, understand and use this ability that we all possess, all of us who are sentient beings, the more you can enact changes, and the more effectively you can live in the world by utilizing these principles. Yeah.
And that phrase, mind over matter, is a common one that people use. So really, when people are saying that, they're relating to principles of alchemy.
Yeah, in many ways. Yeah, I mean, that's an idea that is as old as the Hermetic teachings, and really quite a key point as well. If we look at sort of the development and history of science, and that's another way to understand alchemy, is to look back at the development and history of science and to sort of see how what we have nowadays as chemistry, that word chem comes from alchemy. Because,
really?
Yeah, the word alchemy literally means from Egypt. So al is in the Arabic from, and chem comes from the word kemet, which was the Egyptian word for Egypt. So alchemy literally means from Egypt. It's the teachings that originate in ancient Egypt.
Oh, didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, so science really started off the back of the Renaissance. You've got alchemists, people like Robert Boyle and Isaac Newton, people who start to become interested in how matter behaves in and of itself. And this, I suppose, is a vital point, is that from a modern perspective, from the modern, I suppose, scientific paradigm, it's materialistic, which means that the world is viewed as a machine. It's only matter. If we are to believe that, then none of us are really even conscious. You and I are not here experiencing this. We're just atoms bouncing off randomly, everything. And so science really started with that division between matter and spirit. Whereas if you go back to just before the development of chemistry into alchemy, it's where science and spirituality converge. where we understand that matter and consciousness have an intimate role that they play with each other. And definitely the approach that we have to our life will affect the attitude that we have, and the consciousness that we have will affect everything that happens to us, because matter and consciousness are intimately one.
So what does an alchemist actually do in a practical sense on a day-to-day basis?
Good question. Well, get up and have interviews and do these sorts of things. One popular application of alchemy traditionally was in the lab. And this is where we get the word laboratory as well, because a laboratory is a lab oratory. So an oratory, of course, is where you go in and you pray and you meditate. And for alchemists, the lab and the oratory were one space. So an alchemist on a day-to-day level might be working in their lab, working on, say, a herbal medicine like a tincture or an elixir or an essence. Or,
like we were on Sunday at the workshop.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So there's a whole branch of alchemy called spagyrics, and this was championed really by an alchemist called Paracelsus from the Renaissance. And what he was doing was, I suppose, defining alchemy in a way that it was about medicines, making, special spiritual medicines. So these are medicines that work on all levels, body, soul, and spirit. Again, if we compare it to the medical model, we're working purely on a physical level.
Yeah.
We believe that we can reduce all symptoms to a physical dimension.
Treating symptoms.
That's right, treating symptoms. And in a way, actually, trying to eradicate symptoms. In medicine, it's believed that you're cured when symptoms are gone.
Yeah.
Whereas in alchemy, I suppose, symptoms can be the steam that fuels your transformation. So alchemical principles apply on body, soul, and spirit on all levels. And an alchemist might be working to create a tincture, or perhaps if they want to consider themselves as the vessel, an alchemist might be doing spiritual work to help transform themselves, or they might be using their consciousness and alchemical principles to change something else, perhaps, a relationship, or
to manifest
something. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So looking at the plant kingdom, I think we've got everything we need in nature, haven't we?
Most definitely.
It's like a gift from God, from the universe, whatever people want to call it. You have a particular way of separating the three elements of that plant. Can you go into that?
I think it might be helpful if I use this image here. So this is actually an image from Basil Valentine. It's called the Azoth Mandala. It's been recently coloured in recent years, but this is probably about 500 years old. And what we can see here is in this triangle is we've got three symbols here. So we've got a cube there for body or matter. We have a moon there for spirit, and we have a sun there with the word soul. Interestingly, actually, in alchemy, often these two swap over. The sun becomes spirit and the moon becomes soul, but it doesn't matter for now. What we're working to do, as you mentioned, is we separate out the three essentials: the body, the soul, and the spirit of a plant. In this case, we separate them, we purify them, and we bring them back together. And what we've got around here, along these 7 spikes of the septagram, is the 7 stages of transformation. So these are the alchemical principles I was mentioning earlier, that in alchemy we believe all things in the universe go through these 7 stages somewhat when they are changing form. So if we take something, in this case a herb, and we separate out the 3 essentials and we apply the 7 steps of transformation, we can bring something to its next level of perfection. We can assist the universe in its work to perfect matter through spirit.
So what are the 3 essentials?
So body, soul, and spirit are what are found in all the kingdoms on earth. So we have the animal, vegetable, and mineral. So in the herbal kingdom, the body, this is, I suppose, where we might be looking at science, this idea of just matter, so the body of a herb is literally its physical matter. The spirit, which is symbolized by the moon, again, often symbolized by the sun, but the spirit is the spirits. So this is where we take a plant, ferment it, and we distill out the spirits of the plant. And the soul, we might call that the essential oils of the plant. So in herbs, what we do is we separate out the salts or the body, the spirit or the spirits, the alcohol, and the soul or the oils, the essential oils. We separate these out, we purify them, and then we bring them back together. And what we have is we have a liquid form of that plant, which is really powerful, and it's a form of medicine that I suppose is like the original plant, but it's exalted.
Yeah, and you call that tincture.
A tincture, yeah. And what you can do is, in alchemy, you can combine these three essentials in different ways to produce different forms of that medicine. So a tincture represents one form of that medicine. Another form of it might be an essence, and another form of it might be an elixir. Some people have heard of the word elixir. That, again, is an Arabic word. It literally means from the ashes. So a true alchemical elixir is actually a powder. It's a powdered form of the medicine. And another form, yet again, in the herbal kingdom is a stone. You can actually make a stone by combining these three essentials in a unique way to make a quote-unquote philosopher's stone out of it. Yeah.
And with the philosopher's stone, what would you do with that? Is that like used for magic rituals?
Well, stone is like any other alchemical medicine. You can use it medicinally or magically. I mean, that's another whole side of this art is some alchemists believe that you would use these medicines strictly for a medical point of view, but I suppose the other important principle in alchemy is that there's three parts to the whole wisdom as it was laid down by Hermes, the patron god of alchemy. Those three parts are astrology, alchemy, and theurgy or magic. So you could use a stone or any of these medicines to enact a magical change. So say, for example, in your life, you were looking to, on a physical level, you might be looking to soothe your nerves a little bit, but in your emotional or life outside of your body, you might be looking to become more fortunate or to improve your business relations. You might choose something like lemon balm or melissa, because its signature is ruled by Jupiter. So that's this little part just here. So you might use a stone, or you might use a tincture or an elixir or an essence to bring the influence of this planet or this archetype into your life. And you could do that just by taking it. Tinctures, you can take a few drops at a time, or if you were into magic as well, you could use this magically in a ritual. That's one of the beautiful things about alchemy and magic is that they bolt on to each other very well. They've got this same sort of worldview of the seven archetypes, the seven planets, 7 days of the week, 7 notes to the musical scale. Yeah. You can map everything onto these.
I love this diagram. Can you just talk us through these 7 circles about transformation, about the journey?
Definitely.
It's so interesting. When Ben covered this, it was like, wow, I'd love to film this, and actually now we are. So maybe I've manifested that.
Well, this will be just a very basic run through of this, of course, but I'll try my best. So, and this, of course, might be mirrored a little bit, but we'll actually be moving around this way. So the alchemical work always begins. We've got these 7 planets here, and you might notice there's so many levels to this drawing. I almost can't go into all of them. I'll try and go into a bit of depth, but so generally, what tends to happen is that you move through the order of these planets, and you start with Saturn, and Saturn in astrology is sort of it's the furthest planet away that is visible to our naked eye. Saturn is a slow-moving planet, and there's a metal which corresponds to Saturn, and that's lead. So our Saturnic aspects are those parts of ourselves which are slowest and most sluggish, just like the planet. The metal lead is seen to be very hard to sort of transform it. on a molecular sense, it's actually very close to gold, but it's quite hard to move lead and to shift it. It's very heavy. These are the aspects in our lives which are really difficult to transform. It's also like the nuts and bolts.
So like when you're stuck in a situation, you find it like in the dark night of the soul.
Yeah, in a way it is. It's Saturn often manifests its influence in our life in sort of in positive ways. It's the structure and the boundaries that we have. It's the job. It's the day-to-day grind. But sometimes when Saturn, a Saturnic influence, kind of blasts through our life, it's when we might have a shaming or a public humiliation in some way. It's when the false ego, the false king of our ego, our small ego, is sort of triumphant, and but it gets knocked down in some big way, and we realize that small person that we think we are, that we identify so strongly with, is not that.
It's like the death of the ego.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So what we apply to that is a process called calcination, and this is where we're using the element of fire to purge and to cleanse. In many ways, when Saturn is present, there is this burn happening. Again, that burn of ego, or that burn of humiliation, that burn of shame. And what we've almost got to do is just go with it. Just let everything go that is false, because false structures are being created and they need to be burnt away. And then we move up one rung in the planets. We move up to Jupiter, and Jupiter is there. It's the part of us that Jupiter is associated with, I suppose, the superficiality of social relationships. It's also success. It's also it's like the connection, the social connection that exists between people. In its positive form, it's fortunate, but in its shadow form, it's shallow. And what we apply to Jupiter is a process called dissolution. So this is where, in dissolution, you can see here, this is symbolized by this black crow. Looking at the white, down here we had the black crow, which is often a symbol of calcination, sitting on Saturn, is often symbolized by bones. We have a skull there. Up here in dissolution, we're using water, the water element. You can see that it's getting dissolved.
Like washing away.
Yeah, the skull has been dissolved. And we might apply in here Hermetic meditations or principles working with water. So that's where we might cry, actually. This is like the grieving, in a way, for the loss of this part. We might connect authentically to people, because of course that's the antidote to the shiny, false relationships of Jupiter.
Yeah. So this is about letting the masks go and coming back to your authenticity.
That's right.
Who you are at your core.
Exactly. And about being real with people.
Yeah.
Being real with yourself.
Vulnerable as well.
Yeah, vulnerable. That's right. Yeah, it's a really good point. And then we move on to the third operation here, which is separation, symbolized by Mars, because you need an iron will at this point to separate out what the matter that we've started with in these first two operations. And we can see here that these birds are starting to come down to the matter here and are about to retrieve it. But in this phase, this is where we might be looking back after the change of these first two steps, and we want to separate ourselves out from negative influences or things that we perceive are no longer true for ourselves. Yeah,
like rising above, like the phoenix rising from the ashes. And what do I want to take forward from this experience that's going to support me?
Exactly. It's the part where we might be sort of saying, oh, I don't want to. If an alcoholic, for example, might be like, reach that point where they're like, I can't be going to the pub all the time now, or I can't be spending time.
Changes.
Yeah, they almost need to separate themselves in a way to start to implement those changes.
Yeah.
And then we move around to Venus, and this is where in Venus we can see that the two birds are rising. They're lifting a crown up. You can kind of see there. They're lifting this crown up to the above. And this is a really important turning point. You can see it's right at the top here. It's a turning point from the below to the above. And what's happening here is that the essence is starting to become ascended. And Venus is the lover. She's, this is often about relating and sex and romance, but not always necessarily sexual. It can also be about new partnerships and things like this. This phase is actually often held up as the apogee of spiritual experience, because this is where synchronicities start to occur, because we're really starting to be in line with our true path. And we often might get caught because we think, oh, I've reached the end of the work. Oh, everything's flowing and everything's easy and my life is in flow. But of course, invariably, we know that this phase doesn't always last. And what happens immediately after this, like an example might be, we might go to a workshop, or like mine last weekend, for example, or we might have learnt something new, and we leave feeling like, oh wow, I'm on a buzz, I'm on a high, I can't wait to implement all of this. But invariably what happens is that we might slip back to old ways of being. That change might not be permanent, and the synchronicities sort of fizzle away. And what takes us over in this phase here, which starts off with putrefaction. This is literally where you have the kind of the going to the black, that sort of sense of rotting. Internally, it can feel like, depression is overtaking you, because you think, oh, well, what's the point? I'm doing all this.
You think, I know it all, I've got there, I've got there. And then you find out a new piece of information, you think, I know nothing.
Yeah.
The more I know, the more I realise I don't know.
Exactly. And actually that's a good point, because what comes from that phase is a real humbling. Ideally, what comes out of that is a humbling attitude. There's actually a surrender that takes place at some point, where you kind of actually give up. You realise there's no point. I'm not in control. The false ruler that was here has now been usurped by spirit.
Yeah.
And what happens at that moment is we move into the second part of this phase, which is fermentation. In fermentation, like a literal physical fermentation, like when you're fermenting wine, this is where we can't really be in control of that process. We can create conditions for fermentation to take place. But actually what happens is that the universe decides when something becomes fermented. Yeah. And when that fermenting spirit enters, it represents a rebirth. It's a second life for the matter that's in the container. And it's the same for us. At this point, we give up. There's a putrefaction, there's a darkening, and at some point, spirit re-enters us, and we realize it's actually not from us. We are not the rulers, as it were. We're a part of that, but we're not in control of everything that's going on. And
it's like we're an aspect of the divine, and if we surrender to it, then we can move on further around the path on a different level.
Exactly. And then that's when we move around here. So that's symbolized by Mercury. This part here is symbolized by the moon. So in this part here, we enter into distillation, and what you can see on that image there is that there's actually a little unicorn there. The unicorn is used to symbolize distillation, because the unicorns in mythology could only be approached by virgins. Only a virgin could tame a unicorn, because they're pure. Yeah. That was the idea. And so, of course, the unicorn represents purity. And in distillation, that's what we're doing. We're purifying the vessel. We're purifying things on this level.
This is like a purification of the body, mind, soul as we're going through this process.
That's right. Yeah, it's the final purification before we finally enter into the last phase, which is the sun. By this point, when we're at the sun, we're at the last planet in our solar system. This is the planet that everything is really subject to. Yeah. Without the sun, without light, nothing would be really happening. And in alchemy, the sun is a symbol of the universal consciousness that animates reality, bringing life into the solar system and into the galaxy. And in this phase, what you can see here is that there's a little androgyne or hermaphrodite popping out of the ground. The hermaphrodite in alchemy is often seen as the the ultimate symbol of the enlightened mind, or of the enlightened evolution of matter. So the stone is symbolized, the philosopher's stone is symbolized by the androgyne, because the androgyne is both masculine and feminine. So like in here, we worked with masculine, here we're working with feminine, you know, rationality and thought, emotions, intuition. But an enlightened consciousness at the end actually has both. It's an intelligence of the heart. You can see this every day practically in people that you meet. Some people have a very strong masculine side. They're very rational. They think a lot. And that's useful for certain things. You know, without our masculine side, we can't plan, we can't reason. You know, our lives would just be a mess. But it's also not good to only be ruled by the masculine, because of course you'll kind of think too much, and you can't connect with people emotionally. You need
that balance, don't you? It's like the marrying of the masculine and the feminine within the one vessel.
Exactly.
Yeah, bringing that balance.
And that's a common theme in alchemy too, the marriage of the sun and moon. If you have the feminine as well, you have your emotions and your intuition. But of course, if you've only got the feminine, that's a problem as well, because you'll just be completely...
You've not got the drive to do anything, have you?
Well, yeah. And in many ways, you'll probably have pretty bad boundaries as well, because you'll be completely fluid and watery. You won't be able to put things into action in the real world. So, of course, a balanced person has both. They have the masculine and the feminine in them. And that's what gives birth to the hermaphrodite, or Hermes and Aphrodite. When they get together, they make a child, which is both.
So with this, then, we're constantly going round this cycle, but every time we're going, it's taking us to a higher level, like a spiral going up. As we raise our consciousness. Well, so what about this symbol in the middle? What does this represent?
So in the middle there, you can see we've got a person. You can actually make out the alchemist. So there's the alchemist's legs, and he's got his two arms here, and he's looking through the middle. And what some alchemists do when they're using this for meditation is they put a little mirror here, so that when you're meditating on this, you see your own face in the middle. We also have this triangle, which represents the triangle of manifestation. Also, it's a smaller version of the three essentials, because the alchemist has the three essentials within as well. We have those three essentials within us. And around the edge of the picture, there's some Latin written as well. So it says, Visitia interiora terra rectificando in unis occultum lapidum, which means visit the interior of the earth, rectify, and you will find the hidden stone. So this is a summary of this whole process in just a few words. So you visit the interior. This could mean, if you're doing lab alchemy, you're visiting literally the interior of the matter itself. You're going into it to bring out its hidden essence. If we're talking about ourselves at the vessel, this could mean going into our unconscious, or into our internal world, or even our physical body. We go into the interior, visit the interior of the earth. We rectify, which means to purify, and then we will find the hidden stone. We will find the exalted state. And just to follow on from what you were saying, a good way to look at this is like octaves of a musical scale. So the scale has 7 steps, and then when we reach the 8th note, we're on the same note as where we started, but it's a higher octave.
Oh, that's a great way of looking
So
at it.
in a way, we move around this cycle of transformation, constantly refining energy, constantly refining ourselves, and the work just goes on and on.
I love this. If people are interested in actually looking at this image, where can they find it?
You'll be able to find it on the internet if you just type in Azoth. It's called the Azoth mandala, A-Z-O-T-H. This colouring actually was done by my teacher and mentor, Dennis William Huck. He's written quite a lot about this mandala, but you can just find it on the internet by typing the Azoth mandala. It will come up in the search.
Okay. Well, Ben, thank you so much. If people want to find out more about your work and, you know, the trainings that you offer, how can they contact you?
Just through my website. It's www.benjaminturale.com.
How do you spell that?
So it's www.benjamin, BENJAMIN, TURALE.com. You can also find online you'll often find lots of resources for studying, and
Yeah.
there's many great schools out there. I should also mention the guild. There's the International Alchemy Guild, of which I serve on the board of directors as director of education. We sort of exist as a I don't want to say fraternity because men and women belong to it, but it's an organisation of people coming together to share views on alchemy and share learning. And we also have an online presence as well on Facebook as well. So.
And you're going to be running a conference in Glastonbury. I mean, at the moment we're in January, coming to the end of January 2018.
Yes,
and
we had to think about it.
Yeah. So do you want to just very briefly mention about what it is that you're putting together?
Yeah, it's going to be over 3 days, May the 19th, 20th and 21st. It's going to be a conference of UK alchemists, some of the greatest alchemists that are here really in the world. Gary Nottingham, we've got Dr. Robert Plimmer from the Isle of Wight, we have Chad Henshaw, we have David Cypher and myself, and also Billy, who you interviewed.
Oh yes, Billy the
previously.
Celt.
Billy the Celt.
He's the bard of Glastonbury.
He is, and he's actually going to be opening the conference for us because the conference is on St. Dunstan's Day, and both alchemists and musicians recognise Dunstan as a patron saint. And St. Dunstan's Day is when they decide the new bard of Glastonbury. So Billy's going to actually be opening the conference for us, and that'll be one of his last official acts as bard, because that night he will, of course, choose the next bard of Glastonbury.
And I love how it's a complete synchronicity that you chose this day without even realising that it was St. Dunstan's Day.
Yeah, it was very strange. I wanted to dedicate the conference to St. Dunstan and had been given a few dates by the venue, and the one I chose in the end, I was like, oh, that will work conveniently in terms of time. And it wasn't until I spoke to Billy afterwards that I realised it was actually St. Dunstan's Day. It's just another strange Glastonbury type synchronicity.
But that's really good because it just shows that you're being guided and you're on the right path. So thank you so much for putting time aside today to talk to me, and to hopefully you've got some education from listening into the interview today. And if you are interested in learning about alchemy, I really do recommend Ben as a teacher. Fantastic knowledge, really good resource, and a really nice guy as well.
Oh, thank you. It's really nice of you to say.
So thanks everybody, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.